Hey guys, Lord Naren White here, the Holy Ghost of the one true God. Back with you with the next video in my series reading The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn by Mark Twain. Without further ado, returning to The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn as read by Lord Naren White. All of a sudden the lightning let go a perfect sluice of white glare and somebody sings out, "By the living Jingo, here's the bag of gold in his breast." Hines let out a whoop like everybody else and dropped my wrist and gave a big surge to bust his way in and get a look. And the way I lit out and shinned for the road in the dark, there ain't nobody can tell. I had the road all to myself, and I fairly flew leastways. I had it all to myself except the solid dark, and the now and then glares, and the buzzing of the rain, and the thrashing of the wind, and the splitting of the thunder, and sure as are born, I did clip it along. When I struck the town, I see there weren't nobody out in the storm, so I never hunted for no back streets, but humped it straight through the main one. And when I begun to get towards our house, I aimed my eye and set it. No light there, the house all dark, which made me feel sorry and disappointed. I didn't know why, but at last, just as I was sailing by, flash comes the light in Mary Jane's window, and my heart swelled up sudden, like to bust, and the same second the house and all was behind me in the dark, and wasn't ever going to be before me no more in this world. She was the best girl I ever see, and had the most sand. The minute I was far enough above the town to see, I could make the towhead. I begun to look sharp for a boat to borrow, and the first time the lightning showed me one that wasn't chained, I snatched it and shoved. It was a canoe, and it warn't fastened with nothing but a rope. The towhead was a rattling big distance off, away out there in the middle of the river, but I didn't lose no time. And when I struck the raft at last, I was so exhausted I would just lay down to blow and gasp if I could afforded it, but I didn't. As I sprung aboard, I sung out, "Out with you, Jim, and set her loose! Glory be to goodness, we're shut of them!" Jim lit out, and was a-coming for me with both arms spread. He was so full of joy. But when I glimpsed him in the lightning, my heart shot up in my mouth and I went overboard backwards, for I forgot he was old King Lear and had drowned Arab all in one. And it most scared the livers and lights out of me, but Jim fished me out, and was going to hug me, and bless me, and so on. He was so glad I was back, and we was shut of the king and the duke, but I says, "Not now. Have it for breakfast. Have it for breakfast. Cut loose and let her slide." So in 2 seconds away we went a-sliding down the river, and it did seem so good to be free again, and all by ourselves on the big river, and nobody to bother us. I had to skip around a bit, and jump up and crack my heels a few times. I couldn't help it, but about the third crack I noticed a sound that I knowed mighty well, and held my breath and listened and waited, and sure enough, when the next flash busted out over the water, here they come. And just a-laying to their oars and making their skiff hum, it was the king and the duke. So I wilted right down onto the planks then, and give up, and it was all I could do to keep from crying. Chapter 30. When they got aboard, the king went for me and shook me by the collar and says, "Trying to give us the slip, was ye pup? Tired of our company, hey?" I says, "No, your majesty, we weren't. Please don't, your majesty." "Quick, then, and tell us what was your idea, or I'll shake the insides out of you." "Honest, I'll tell you everything that just as it happened. Your majesty, that man that had a holt of me was very good to me, and kept saying he had a boy about as big as me that died last year, and he was sorry to see a boy in such a dangerous fix. And when they was all took by surprise by finding the gold and made a rush for the coffin, he lets go of me and whispers, 'Heel it now, or they'll hang ye, sure,' and I lit out. It didn't seem no good for me to stay. I couldn't do nothing, and I didn't want to be hung if I could get away. So I never stopped running till I found the canoe, and when I got here I told Jim to hurry. or they'd catch me and hang me yet, and said I was afeard you and the Duke wasn't alive now, and I was awful sorry, and so was Jim, and I was awful glad when we see you coming. You may ask Jim if I didn't. Jim said it was so, and the king told him to shut up and said, "Oh yes, it's mighty likely," and shook me up again and said he reckoned he'd drowned me. But the Duke says, "Let go the boy, you old idiot. Would you have done any different? Did you inquire around for him when you got loose? I don't remember it." So the king let go of me and begun to cuss that town and everybody in it. But the Duke says, "You better a blame sight give yourself a good cussing, for you're the one that's entitled to it most. You ain't done a thing from the start that had any sense in it, except coming out so cool and cheeky with that imaginary blue arrow mark. That was bright. It was right down bully, and it was the thing that saved us. For if it hadn't been for that, they'd have jailed us till them Englishmen's baggage come, and then the penitentiary, you bet. But that trick took 'em to the graveyard, and the gold done us a still bigger kindness. For if the excited fools hadn't let go all holts and made that rush to get a look, we'd have slept in our cravats tonight. Cravats warranted to wear, too, longer than we'd need 'em." They was still a minute thinking. Then the king says, kind of absent-minded like, "And we reckon the blacks stole it." That made me squirm. "Yes," says the Duke, kinder slow and deliberate and sarcastic, "we did." And after about half a minute, the king draws out, "Leastways, I did." The Duke says the same way, "On the contrary, I did." The king kind of ruffles up and says, "Looky here, Bilgewater, what are you referring to?" The Duke says, pretty brisk, "When it comes to that, maybe you'll let me ask what you was referring to." "Shucks," says the king, very sarcastic, "but I don't know. Maybe you was asleep and didn't know what you was about." The Duke bristles up now and says, "Oh, let up on this cussed nonsense. Do you take me for a blamed fool? Don't you reckon I know who hid that money in that coffin?" "Yes, sir, I know you do know, because you done it yourself." "It's a lie!" And the Duke went for him. The king sings out, "Take your hands off me. Leg on my throat. I take it all back." The Duke says, "Well, you just own up first that you did hide the money there, intending to give me the slip one of these days, and come back and dig it up and have it all to yourself." "Wait just a minute, Duke. Answer me this one question, honest and fair. If you didn't put the money there, say it, and I'll believe you, and take back everything I said." "You old scoundrel, I didn't, and you know I didn't. There, now." "Well then, I believe you. But answer me only just this one more. Now don't get mad. Didn't you have it in your mind to hook the money and hide it?" The Duke never said nothing for a little bit, then he says, "Well, I don't care if I did. I didn't do it anyway. But you not only had it in mind to do it, but you done it. I wished I'd never die if I done it, Duke, and that's honest. I won't say I weren't going to do it, because I was. But somebody got it ahead of me." "It's a lie. You done it, and you got to say you done it, or—" The king began to gurgle, and then he gasped out, "Enough! I own up." I was very glad to hear him say that. It made me feel much more easier than what I was feeling before. So the Duke took his hands off and says, "If you ever deny it again, I'll drown you. It's well for you to sit there and blubber like a baby. It's fitting for you, after the way you've acted. I never see such an old ostrich for wanting to gobble everything, and I trusting you all the time. Like you was my own father, you ought to have been ashamed of yourself, and to stand by and hear it saddled onto a lot of poor blacks, and you never say a word for 'em. It makes me feel ridiculous to think I was soft enough to believe that rubbish. Cuss you, I can see now why you was so anxious to make up the deficit. You wanted to get what money I'd got out of the nonsuch, and one thing or another and scoop it all." The king says, timid, and still a snuffling, "Why, Duke, it was you that said make up the deficit. It wasn't me. Try up." "I don't want to hear no more out of you," says the Duke. "And now you see what you got by it. They've got all their own money back, and all of earn but a shekel or two besides. Go long to bed, and don't you deferest me no more deficits, longs as you live. So the king sneaked into the wigwam and took to his bottle of for comfort, and before long the duke tackled his bottle, and so in about a half an hour that they was as thick as thieves again. And the tighter they got, the lovinger they got, and went off a snoring in each other's arms. They both got powerful mellow, but I noticed the king didn't get mellow enough to forget to remember to not deny about hiding the money bag again. That made me feel easy and satisfied. Of course, when they got to snoring, we had a long gabble, and I told Jim everything. We'll go ahead and stop there for this week. As usual, I want to say thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed. Please like, comment, and subscribe, as it greatly helps the channel. Light to be with you all. Take care, and thanks again.